The red light above camera 2 burned steady when it happened. Jonathan Roumie was halfway through an answer, calm, measured, polite, when his face abruptly drained of color. His jaw slackened. His eyes stopped blinking. His entire body went still, as though something seized him from the inside out. The host tried to laugh it off, a quick glance to the control room, but the audience fell into a sudden, unnatural quiet. You could actually hear it on air. The silence. He was staring at nothing, or so everyone thought. But the expression on his face made it unmistakable. He was seeing something. Not remembering, not thinking, seeing. 2 seconds. Then 5. Then 10. A producer off-camera whispered, "Cut. Cut to commercial." But the director held. Nobody knew why. Nobody moved. Roumie's lips parted, but no words came out. His throat worked once, like someone bracing for pain. One woman in the live audience audibly gasped. A man in the back murmured, "Jesus," under his breath, not as a prayer, but as a diagnosis. The host's hand hovered an inch from Roumie's arm, afraid to touch him, afraid of what he might interrupt. Something was happening on live television, and it was holy or horrifying. No one could tell which. Then Roumie breathed in hard, a full body shudder, and slowly turned his eyes away from whatever only he could see. The show was still live. Millions watching. A witness moment, not a speech. A warning, not yet spoken. The network pretended nothing had happened. When the broadcast returned from commercial, they rolled a pre-taped segment, a harmless, scripted filler, as if the rupture in the room could be repaired by pretending the rupture never occurred. But people had seen. And worse, people had felt it. In the control booth, 3 crew members refused to sit back down. One woman kept whispering, "Did you feel that? Did you feel that?" It was heavy, like the air changed. Another producer said, "Don't say that on comms. Legal is listening." But his hands were shaking. On social media, the clip spread in real time. Nobody could explain why the moment was so disturbing. No lights flickered, no sound broke, no object moved. But the stillness itself had agency, like a presence stepped into the frame, and everything in the room instinctively obeyed. And Roumie, who had not uttered a single prophetic sentence, had nevertheless delivered a message without speaking. When the taping ended, an assistant walked Roumie to a hallway offset. "Are you all right?" she asked. No answer. He was still locked inside whatever he had seen. She tried again. "Do you need a medic?" He finally turned, and the look in his eyes stopped her. Not terror, not confusion, recognition and dread. He sat down, elbows on his knees, breathing slow and controlled, as if he was negotiating with tears he refused to allow. The host entered. "Listen, if you had a panic attack on air, it's fine, we can." Roumie cut him off. Calm, level, surgical. It wasn't panic. The host swallowed. Then what was it? Roumie looked at him. Not dramatic, not emotional, just factual. "I was shown something I wasn't supposed to say yet." The host's face changed. "Shown by who?" Roumie's answer came without blinking. "You already know the answer." The host went quiet. The assistant backed away. Nobody laughed this time, because the worst part wasn't that Roumie believed what he just said. He blinked, and the studio was gone. No cameras, no host, no audience. He stood inside a sanctuary, not of one church, but of all churches layered over each other like transparent ghosts. Wooden pews and velvet chairs overlapped. Cathedral arches bled into warehouse stages. Candles merged with LED walls. Thousands of pulpits stacked inside one another like reflections in a mirror. And every pulpit was burning, not with orange flame, with a pale, silent, intelligence-filled fire that did not consume wood or metal, but consumed pretense. Priests, pastors, bishops, evangelists, some radiant, some dim, some half-lit, stood in those layered pulpits with their mouths moving but their words producing no sound. The silent fire judged before it spoke. Roumie watched as one man, impeccably dressed, applauded by invisible crowds, tried to hold up a Bible, and the moment he opened it, ash blew from its pages, exposing that he had never carried scripture, only reputation. He dissolved like soot in wind, not his flesh, but his influence, erased without scream or sound. Then the scene shifted, not by motion, but by revelation multiplying. Choirs turned into crowds of spectators with phones. Altars flattened into stages. Worship became recital. The Spirit was present only as a tolerated guest, not an obeyed king. And above every roof of every merged church, a word appeared, not written, but known. One by one, leaders were weighed in that word. Some crumbled into light, approved. Some collapsed into dust, exposed. Most remained, trembling, neither affirmed nor destroyed yet, but suspended, as though mercy was thinning and time was nearly gone. A voice, not thunder, not whisper, sentence without sound, filled the vision. My house will not be neutral at the hour of harvest. Then the vision detonated wider. The walls of the sanctuary split open and the world intruded like a rushing second layer. Cities collapsing into protests, skies thick with smoke, war footage stacking over church images like translucent film. Markets crashing, sirens in every tone, governments shaking, screens broadcasting fear like liturgy. And in the center of it all, the church, not buildings now, but believers themselves, flickered like candles in wind. Some stood unshaken, eyes fixed upward. Others flickered out mid-frame, extinguished without struggle, gone as though they had never burned. A second word appeared, over nations, not churches. The same sentence without sound spoke again, but sharpened. Those who will not stand for me before men will not stand in the moment of unveiling. Then something worse. The clocks, thousands of them, in streets, in boardrooms, on pulpits, on war rooms, all began to accelerate. Not tick, accelerate. Time itself compressing. Deadlines collapsing into the present. There was no countdown, only compression, as if the future was being dragged into now. Roumie felt the acceleration press against his ribs, as though judgment had already begun and people were still talking as if it hadn't. Then he saw what broke him. The dividing line, not between Christian and atheist, not between church and world, but between the surrendered and the performative, between those marked and those merely affiliated, between the remnant and the religious. The room had gone heavy, not the heaviness of debate, but something else. The kind of stillness that happens when everyone realizes the line has already been crossed. Joel Osteen sat back in his chair, smiling, not defensively, not angrily, but with that practiced calm that only a man who has stood in storms knows how to wear. Jonathan didn't break eye contact. I'm not attacking you, he said, his voice low but unwavering. I'm asking what every believer is afraid to ask publicly. Are we comforting people into sleep, instead of waking them to eternity? That line did it. One of the producers off-camera raised his hands as if to call a break. Another shook his head, knowing they were live and the nation had heard. Joel cleared his throat. Jonathan, people already know what they're doing wrong. I don't need to spend my life reminding them. Jonathan leaned closer, not combative, but almost pleading. But if we don't warn them, and they die thinking comfort was salvation, then what will we say to God when he asks why we stayed gentle when the stakes were eternal? No one breathed. No one moved. It wasn't a debate anymore. It was a collision between two theologies on live television. And then, something even more shocking happened. Joel didn't fire back. He went silent, not because he was cornered, but because he seemed to understand exactly what Jonathan meant. And he had no quick answer. Cut to commercial. Black screen. When the broadcast returned from commercial, they didn't resume the conversation. There was no wrap-up, no summary, no attempt to smooth things over. The host looked into the camera with a face drained of color, read a closing line about an important and necessary conversation, and the program ended. But the silence didn't. That moment, the one no one planned, detonated outside the studio. Clips were ripped and uploaded within minutes. Some called Jonathan arrogant. Some called Joel exposed. Most weren't even arguing theology. They were shocked that someone had finally said aloud what the church has whispered in private rooms for years. Is the gospel being declawed for comfort or preached for eternity? By nightfall, every platform was on fire. Pastors weighed in. Atheists mocked. Believers trembled, not at the clash, but at the reminder. Comfort can fill churches. Only truth can save souls. And Jonathan? He didn't gloat. He didn't tweet a victory lap. He didn't book another interview. He went home, switched off his phone, and prayed, not over the argument, but over the millions who would see the clip and finally ask the one question that matters. If the gospel I believe never shakes me, do I still have the gospel? And Joel? He stayed quiet too, not silenced out of humiliation, but as if he, for the first time in a long time, had been forced to reconsider the cost of soft words. Nothing was resolved on air. Nothing was settled with applause. Nothing ended clean. But something began. The church, long sedated by pleasant sentences, was suddenly awake, blinking under a harsh light, and asking itself a question it could no longer avoid.